I had been looking forward to this vacation for months. Life as a family man in bustling Newark, New Jersey was rewarding but exhausting. The constant noise, the demands of work, and the responsibilities of fatherhood weighed heavily on me. I needed a break, a chance to recharge away from it all. That's why I chose to visit a secluded seaside town, Willow Cove, during the off-season. It promised peace, quiet, and solitude, exactly what I needed. The drive to Willow Cove was serene. The town was nestled between rugged cliffs and the Atlantic Ocean, its old-fashioned charm untouched by time. As I arrived, the salty breeze filled my lungs, and I felt an immediate sense of calm. The streets were nearly empty, the few locals I saw nodding politely as I passed by. I checked into a quaint bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who welcomed me warmly. "You picked the perfect time to visit," Mrs. Thompson said with a knowing smile. "The town is all yours." That evening, I strolled along the deserted beach, the only sounds the gentle lapping of waves and the distant cries of seagulls. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt the weight of the city slip away. I was alone but content. The next morning, I awoke to an unseasonable chill. The sky was overcast, and a dense fog had rolled in, obscuring the town. I shrugged it off and decided to explore. As I walked through the narrow streets, I noticed something odd. The locals, few as they were, seemed to be preparing for some kind of event. They whispered to each other in hushed tones, casting furtive glances my way. At the local cafe, I struck up a conversation with the barista, a young woman named Emily. "Is something special happening?" I asked, nodding towards the people outside. Emily hesitated, then forced a smile. "Just local traditions," she said. "Nothing to worry about." Her answer felt off, but I didn't press further. I spent the rest of the day exploring the town. Every so often, I noticed the locals staring at me a little too long, their conversation ceasing abruptly when I walked by. Unease began to settle in my gut. That evening, as I returned to the bed and breakfast, Mr. Thompson was waiting for me on the porch. "You should stay in tonight," he suggested, his tone friendly but firm. "The weather's going to get worse." I nodded, though something about his words left me feeling unsettled. In my room, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I closed the curtains and tried to focus on a book, but my mind kept wandering back to the strange behavior of the townsfolk. Late at night, I was jolted awake by the sound of muffled voices. Curious, I slipped out of bed and crept to the window. Through a small gap in the curtains, I saw a group of people gathered in the street below, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. My curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly opened the window just enough to hear. "We need to prepare him," one of them said. "The ritual requires a willing participant." "But he doesn't know," another voice argued. "We can't risk him finding out." My blood ran cold. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding. Whatever they were planning, it involved me, and it wasn't something I wanted any part of. The next day, I tried to act normal while desperately searching for a way out. The town seemed even more deserted, and the few locals I saw were openly watching me now, their expressions unreadable. I needed to find a way to escape before it was too late. That evening, I devised a plan. I pretended to take Mr. Thompson's advice and stay in my room, but as the night wore on, I quietly slipped out of the bed and breakfast through a back window. The fog was thicker than ever, but I knew I had to move quickly. I knew I had to create a convincing distraction to give myself enough time to escape. The idea began to form as I made my way to the town's abandoned warehouse, where I knew I could find materials to help me. The warehouse was dark and musty, filled with broken furniture and forgotten relics. I found a few old, dusty mannequins and clothing that could be useful. I quickly set to work, dressing one of the mannequins in my spare clothes and positioning it in a spot that could be seen through the window. I rigged a simple device with fishing line and a small bell I found in the warehouse. If someone entered my room, the bell would ring, making it seem like I had just left. With the decoy in place, I crept back to the bed and breakfast. From the shadows, I could see the townsfolk gathering, their dark forms moving through the thick fog. I had to be quick and quiet. I slipped back inside through the back window and set my trap. Next, I wrote a note and left it on the desk in my room. The note read, "I've decided to take a walk and explore the beach tonight. I'll be back by morning." I hoped it would mislead anyone who found it. Satisfied with my setup, I quietly made my way back out of the bed and breakfast, making sure to leave the window slightly ajar. I headed to the beach, where I knew the fog would be thickest and provide good cover. I found a secluded spot near the cliffs, hidden from view, and waited. As the hours passed, I heard the distant sound of footsteps and muffled voices. My heart raced as I strained to listen. They had found the note and the decoy. The bell rang, and the sound of hurried footsteps filled the night. They were falling for it. From my hidden spot, I watched as the townsfolk split up, some heading towards the beach while others searched the streets. They were looking for me, but I remained hidden, my breath shallow and quiet. I knew I had to wait for the perfect moment to make my move. Once the searchers had moved further down the beach, I made my way back to the main road. I knew the only way out was on foot, and I had to be careful not to attract any attention. The fog was still thick, providing me with cover as I moved silently through the town. I reached the edge of town and glanced back, making sure no one was following me. The streets were empty, the townsfolk still searching for me in the wrong places. I couldn't believe my plan had worked. I turned and began walking towards the nearest highway, hoping to find a ride out of this cursed town. After what felt like hours of walking, I finally saw the headlights of a truck approaching. I waited down, and the driver, a kind-looking man in his 50s, stopped and offered me a ride. As we drove away, the fog began to lift, and the town of Willow Cove faded into the distance. I returned to Newark, grateful to be reunited with my family. The memories of Willow Cove lingered, a constant reminder of the hidden dangers that lurk beneath the surface of seemingly idyllic places. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the distant sound of waves and the echo of chants in the wind. And I remember the night I outsmarted the townsfolk of Willow Cove and escaped their sinister ritual.